we're covering some practicalities in Hebrews 13, which is where we've been last week, this week, and we'll be there again next week, wrapping it up. And it's Hebrews 13 is fascinating because throughout the entire book of Hebrews, it's been deep theological truth after deep theological truth, and then he wraps it all up in a nice bow here at the end in 13, which is practical point after practical point, like basically every verse. It's like, what do we do with this? What does it mean for our lives? And that's why it's worth spending 3 weeks studying this. And, you can really think of it. These things, these practicalities that are coming up, what they simply are qualities of a healthy church. This is what he's interested in seeing as a result of understanding the theological truths in Hebrews 13. We talked about the need to love your fellow brothers and sisters in the body of Christ, in the church, loving one another, preserving that unity, strengthening that unity. Talked about loving outsiders in verse 2, bringing that, not just getting tribal and keeping it to ourselves, bringing that outside. Solidarity with one another, identifying with each other's struggles and suffering, like you guys are doing with my dad, which I really appreciate, by the way. We talked about marriage, keeping the marriage bed undefiled, sexual integrity, being free. Ian's talking about being free from the love of money also last week, and not letting that be something that takes away from what you're doing with the Lord. So think about that's how you can think of these things. Qualities of a healthy church, and I'm going to talk about 2 more tonight. The first one that comes up is leadership. Verse 7 says, "Remember your leaders, those who spoke to you the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Right? So there's some practicalities here regarding leadership, that each of us who is a Christian was led there by someone else, right? I mean, ultimately we're led there by God, right? But God uses people to lead people. And so if you are a Christian, someone else has led you some way or another. And it's good to imitate them. And imitation is one of the best ways to learn something. This is how young children learn. It's through imitation. This is the stage that my daughter Diane, 2.5 years old now, is at. Like, this is her thing. She just copies everything I do. She copies everything I say. It gets kind of annoying. It's cute at first, but eventually it's just like I want to have conversations with her, but I can't have a conversation. It's having a conversation with myself, because I say something and she just repeats exactly what I said back to me. And then I ask her, "How are you today? How are you today? How are you today? How are you today? How are you?" Can't get anywhere, right? But she's learning. She's learning. She's imitating. Even my bad words I say sometimes. I dropped something the other day, and I was like, I said something. And then I just hear back, like really happy repeating. I'm like, oh, okay. She's at that stage. Got to be careful. Imitation, though. Great way to learn. Imitating your spiritual heroes. Imitating the people who have led you and are leading you, at least in the ways that they imitate Christ. That's a good and wonderful thing. This is a huge part of how I've grown as a believer, is in imitating my spiritual heroes. Chief most would be my dad, for sure. Learned a lot growing up. He's been a leader, senior leader in church since I've been alive, basically. And so I've been able to see what that looks like from a young age. And a lot of what I know today is because of him and imitating him. My uncle, another one of my heroes. I've had a lot of people disciple me through the years, and I've grown through imitating them, as you guys have too. Most of you guys have too. Howard Hendricks is another big one. He was like the guy, I saw him at Summer Institute when I was like 13 years old. He blew me away. He's like the discipleship guy. He's just amazing things. He's dead now, but he had a lot to say when he was alive about discipleship, and he taught it. And 13-year-old me was like, "Oh, I want to be you," Imitation, yeah, that's what he's talking about. But so here's the other thing about Hebrews 13. He kind of like hops and skips around different topics. He comes back around to leadership in verse 17. He says, "Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you." All right, so obey and submit. Basically, the kind of spirit of that verse there is like not making it hard on your leaders more than you need to. One of the things we're going to learn tonight is leadership is a lofty thing. It's a cool thing, but it's a hard thing too. And there's no need People who do lead, they're doing something good. They're trying to do something good. And, it's worth making their lives not misery, and what they're doing. But, yeah. So we're going to, the challenge there in that verse is getting on board with their leaders, working in tandem with them, particularly when they're trying to lead well. But anyway, what I also want to talk about is what leadership even is. We have to understand what leadership is. We have to understand God's view of leadership and how to lead well. And because these are just the natural questions that come up when you read verses about remembering leaders and submitting to leaders. Like, well, what the heck is a leader? But there's even a question before that we have to ask, which is why even talk about leadership? You would expect leadership to be a subject I should talk to with a very small group of people who are going to be the leaders of the church, right? Like, why should I talk about leadership at church to all of you? It seems strange to some of you. Well, let me say this first. First thing we need to talk about leadership is leadership is necessary. Absolutely necessary. Without leadership, you have chaos. Without leadership, disorder. You can't really do anything. You can't get very far without some type of leadership. And so we need to be able to raise up leaders successfully, and we need to have leaders that lead in God's intended way. And this has always been God's plan from the beginning, right? That God would be like the ultimate authority, the ultimate leader, but that he would equip and empower humans and lead through them also. Ephesians 4:11-12 talks about this. It says, God is the one who gave these gifts to the church, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, and the pastors and the teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and build up the body of Christ. And so God has uniquely gifted individuals to lead well. He's put people in contexts on purpose so that they could lead. And that's God's pattern, is that I'm going to use humans and I'm going to lead through humans. I think there's maybe today in our culture, there's like a natural bucking against this idea of like any authority figure is just bad. It's just evil automatically. But, God's kind of into authority figures. God's into leaders. That's his paradigm, as long as they lead his way and not the world's way, of course. It reminds me too of this in Proverbs 29:18, which says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So it's just the need for leadership. I mean, in that context there, he's talking about prophets, that there must be a prophet to tell people the right way and show people the right way. Without leadership, bad news. But here's the other thing about leadership. We are all called to lead. I mean, what did we just read in Ephesians there? As I think that's the very passage we're studying in fellowship group coming up, maybe. But we read that everyone's uniquely gifted. Everyone's uniquely gifted. Everyone has their unique relational context as well, right? Everyone has a unique set of family members, friends, colleagues, whoever it may be. It's unique, a unique social circle for every single person, which means, that's a social circle that this person over here doesn't have, which means if these people are going to be led towards Christ and for Christ, whatever, that's going to be you. Right? For some people, that circle may be wider, right? Not every single person is going to be called to be a senior elder of a church, all right? I mean, that would be literal chaos if we were all senior elders here. Are you kidding me? But that's not for everyone. But everyone is called to lead in some sort of context. As a matter of fact, I can prove it. Matthew 28, the Great Commission, 19-20. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Who is this for? Is this just for the elders? No, this is for all Christians. All Christians are called to take part in this Great Commission, a.k.a. we're all called to lead. We're all called to lead people to Christ. We're all called to lead people in Christ to varying degrees. Nonetheless, as a Christian, at some point, somewhere in your life, there's going to be opportunity for leadership. And so because of that, we need to talk about leadership, of course. And so let's talk about leadership. There's a right way to do leadership, and there's a wrong way to do leadership. There's a godly way to do leadership, and there is a worldly way to do leadership. Mark 10:42-43 talks about the worldly way. Calling them to himself, Jesus said to them, "You know that those who are recognized as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. But it is not this way among you." So he's describing the worldly way of leadership. And the worldly way of leadership is leading through domination, is lead through power, is leading through natural ability, natural charisma, right? And letting that be the driving force of your leadership. And, kind of at the heart of that is a motivation issue too, of I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this for the power. I'm doing this for the prestige. I'm doing this for the fun, whatever it is. That's worldly leadership. And, this is a dangerous thing. It's something to be aware of, because this can and has infected the church. In particular, church history. Throughout church history, this has been the story of ungodly, worldly leaders stepping up in a church context, using their power to abuse, to destroy, to enhance, their own role. Whatever it is, they've become, if you want to get to God, you got to go through us, right? Which is like really setting yourself up as a false authority. That's worldly leadership. And that's where you get things like the Crusades or whatever. It becomes this man-focused thing, which was really one of the main things that gave birth to the Reformation through Martin Luther, who, returned to the Bible, and he read the Bible and realized, hey, wait a minute, it's not about doing these things to earn God's favor. It's about grace. And, the Catholic Church, the leaders there are abusing their power as leaders. And returning to the Bible kind of uncovered that truth. Like, oh man, we're going about this totally wrong. This isn't what being a Christ follower means. Unfortunately, a lot of the leaders that then followed in the Reformation movement ended up being worldly leaders too and abused their power. John Calvin approved of someone getting burned at the stake. That wasn't cool. I don't agree with that. Probably. No, I'm just kidding. That's bad. But, that's worldly leadership, and it's a temptation, and it's a risk. Whenever you have someone that's going to be put in some kind of position of authority, there is the potential for abusing that. And we've seen that. And as a matter of fact, even in this church, I've had to, be part of disqualifying people who have been trying to step into leadership because they were stepping into it for the wrong reasons. The Lord exposed this. It's like, I've had several really hard conversations with people where it's like, dude, it became obvious they're in it for the prestige, they're in it for the kudos, and they're in it for themselves. And it was like, that's the last person you want to be a leader, right? God's view of leadership is totally different. But here's the thing. So, too, I'll mention is, how our fellowship is set up. We got lots of fellowship groups, which means we need lots of leaders, and we have lots of leaders. And so it has a lot too. The danger is lots of opportunities for people to step as leadership who shouldn't be. But here's the one thing that fills me with confidence is that the Lord always has a way, it seems, at least in my experience, of exposing the people who are in leadership for the wrong reasons. Somehow, some way, the Lord will expose it, bring it to light, and it's usually not pretty. But the Lord does expose it. And he does this because he cares about his sheep. He cares about his people. He wants to protect them. And he knows someone in that position who shouldn't be there will abuse that. And so I've seen that several times. The Lord exposing that in someone's heart that they're in it for the wrong reasons. Now, I've seen people react very poorly to that and be like, oh, well, I'm out of here. It's like, okay, I understand. But I've also seen people have that exposed, and then that leads to total heart transformation where they repent. They're like, oh my gosh, my motivations were totally out of whack. I was doing this for the wrong reasons. I'm thankful the Lord exposed that. So just a warning out there, for those of us who are pursuing wanting leadership, not getting into it for the wrong reasons, of course. But obviously with worldly leadership, there's serious issues here. One is it becomes man-centered instead of God-centered. So that's where leadership becomes toxic. It's all about me. Whereas in spiritual leadership, I'm pointing to God. It's all about him, right? That's the difference. And one of the proofs or pieces of evidence that a church has become more about the domineering leadership thing is when that pastor steps down or leaves or whatever, the church crumbles. That's a really bad sign that this was a man-centered thing and not a God-centered thing. It's happened, and it's been well published and in the news and all that kind of stuff. But it happens. And that's one of the things I love about our church is I'm pretty confident. my dad, again, one of the main senior leaders who is there since the very early days of our fellowship here, he's able to step back, retire, and even if he were to die, like, I'm confident, like, this church wouldn't just stop, like, well, he's gone, we're done. Like, he hasn't been up here teaching CT regularly for years now, and we're still here. That's pretty good. And I think he's done a good job of, like, not making it all about him. It really isn't the Keith show here in this fellowship. He's done a good job of refocusing us to, like, no, it's about other people. It's about raising up other people. It's about the people. And so he's able to take a step back. He's able to heal. He's able to retire, and we're going to be just fine because it's not all about him. Praise God. And I hope and I pray and I know that if I was out of here, we'd be fine too, because it's not all about me. But that's worldly leadership when it becomes all about you. Jesus teaches a different way of leadership. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. The other one is compliance instead of conviction. When as a domineering leader, you'll get people to do what you tell them to do, but they're doing it to comply with you, not because they're convicted in their heart. Spiritual leadership is getting people to do things because they're convicted about it and because it's God honoring. It's for the Lord, not for you, and not because they're trying to please you. Spiritual leadership looks different. Matthew 18:26. I have a wrong reference here. Don't worry about that. But he says, it shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great, because the disciples have been arguing, like, who's going to sit at your right hand and left hand, God? And he's like, you got a wrong view of leadership. Whoever would be great among you should be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be your slave. Even as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. What a different picture of leadership. This is spiritual leadership, right? And Jesus is serving as our model. He's like, I'm modeling leadership. How did Jesus model leadership? If anyone could have came and dominated and crushed and, forced his will upon people, it's Jesus. He had the power to do it and he had the right to do it, but he didn't. How did he lead? Well, for starters, he washed feet, that's how he led. He served. He laid his life down, as this passage says. That's real leadership. A worldly leader finds people that they could attach to themselves, right? Like, attach yourself to me and make it all about me, right? But a spiritual leader attaches themselves to others. I'm going to attach myself to you and lift you up and empower you and strengthen you and help you become the person that Jesus wants you to be. That's a spiritual leader. It's a completely flip-flop thing, totally opposite from the world's view of leadership. It becomes about lifting up others, empowering others instead of yourself. Practically, this means, like, here's what a spiritual leader does, right? They'll look around like, man, the people in our fellowship group are feeling really discouraged. Who's going to step up and encourage and say a word of encouragement to help people out? The spiritual leader is going to do that, okay? This person over here is really, engaged in self-destructive behavior. Who's going to speak truth in our life to help pull them out of that? A spiritual leader is going to do that, all right? But leadership, that's leadership in a church context. But what about leadership in other contexts? The family, right? Leadership in the family looks like that too. Like, the kids are not doing well. They're struggling. Who's going to, invest in their lives and try to figure out what's happening and do something about it? The spiritual leader of the family is going to do that, right? The wife is feeling a certain way, is struggling too emotionally. Who's going to step in and try to help there? The leader's going to do that. And who is the leader in a family? The husband, actually. That's true. That's the role that husbands are called to fill as a position of headship or leadership. And people buck against that idea because it's like, oh man, there's just, I guess the woman it doesn't have any value. The man gets all the power, blah blah. But that's because they're looking at leadership through the lens of the world. Leadership, as we're seeing here, is leadership that means laying my life down for you. And so, in the context of a family, the husband lays his life down for the good of the family, for the good of the wife. It's a life of sacrifice. It's a commitment of sacrifice. That's spiritual leadership in that context. And it's the same thing in the church context too, that we lay our lives down for one another. And if you're doing that, you are leading. And so now you see how anyone can lead, how everyone is called to lead. Some in higher positions than others, or different positions than others, but nonetheless, we're all called to do this to varying degrees and in different contexts, to lead spiritually. You can lead your family. You can lead your roommates. You can lead your friends, whoever. Now, this kind of leadership is hard to find. When you see leaders in the world, leaders of corporations, leaders of countries, you get the other picture of leadership, this domineering power kind of thing. And that's because spiritual leadership is truly a supernatural thing. It's very against the grain, even internally, to say, like, instead of thinking about myself, I'm going to sacrifice myself for others' benefit. And that's something that we can't do naturally. We have to have that quality cultivated within us. And that's something that only God can do, and that's something only God can do only with enough time. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, becoming a leader. What needs to happen is you need to have your character shaped. That's what makes a good leader, is a leader who has had their character shaped by God supernaturally. And so, for example, 1 Timothy 3, this is a list of qualifications for an overseer, or what we would call an elder. It's the same thing. Now, read these qualities here. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. And actually, the list just keeps going on. Lots of qualifications. What are these qualifications? They're character qualifications. They have to do with your character. It's not about ability. It's not about natural charisma, which is what corporations, which is what countries look, that's the kind of leaders they look for. The kind of leaders God looks for are character qualities, leaders that have qualities of character. And, so it's like, he has a high standard here for serving as an elder, which is, in the Bible's outline of leadership roles, the highest. But when you take a closer look at these qualities, right, these aren't just exclusive to, well, it's just elders need to be concerned about that, right? Because, these are just like elements of maturity. This is what maturity looks like, right? Like, just because you're an elder doesn't mean like, oh, I guess I'll just drink all the time, and just be drunk. Like that. No. This is just maturity. This is what maturity looks like. And so for an elder, it's like we're looking for mature people to be an elder, obviously. But they're also essential qualities for leading others, and they're qualities that we should be praying for and participating with God in to develop within ourselves, right? We shouldn't just erase that if we have no intention of becoming an elder. Like, that's for everyone, actually. To work towards in our maturity. Now, and so this is why I say, in this fellowship, what our goal is to see a fellowship of leaders. We want a fellowship of leaders. What we don't want is to see a fellowship where one guy is doing all the work, or two guys, or, a small group is doing the work of ministry. You see that way too typically in the American church, where one or two or few people are doing all the work of ministry. Our expectation, because it's the Bible's expectation, because it's the biblical pattern, is that all of us are called to be ministers. Thus, all of us are called to be leaders. And so I want us to be a fellowship of leaders. And in large part, we are, right? It's beautiful that we have so many different fellowship groups spread across several cities that allows for lots of people to step up and to lead. We're very invested in raising up leaders, and we want more leaders. And I challenge you tonight to become a leader. It's a wonderful thing to be raised in leadership and have God mold your character. But the other reality too is that it's a hard process. This character molding I'm talking about, it's hard, it's difficult, very painful. I've had to go through this, and I've continued to have to go through this, and I'm continuing to have to go through this as a leader today. This is something the Lord has had to do in my life, because I stepped up as a deacon very young. I just was coming out of high school basically, and I knew I was ahead of some of my peers just because, I was raised in a Christian home with Christian leader parents. And I thought I knew it, I knew my stuff, and I got it. Like I knew on a philosophical level, like I probably got some stuff to learn, no doubt. But I kind of also felt, I wouldn't say it out loud probably, but I'm like, pretty mature. Pretty mature for my age. I don't know. I remember, oh man, it's funny. Like being a worker and a leader in the high school group, like kids would say that to me a lot. We're like, I don't know. I just think I'm pretty mature for my age. I'm like, yeah, okay. Anyway, I gotta have grace because I was the same way. I'm pretty mature. And a lot of what contributed to that was I was so successful in everything I did up to that point. Basically, being involved in the junior high group, high school group, coming into college, it was like things were going great, and we're seeing a ton of growth. And I was like, man, this is awesome, and I'm pretty good at what I do. Not gonna lie, pretty awesome. But God, that was just God's grace working, because it was nothing I was doing. I promise you that. I mean, we were growing and growing until boom, all of a sudden we weren't. The groups I was involved with for years stalemated. And I'll tell you, I learned more and I grew more during that period of non-growth than I ever did during the period of growth. God used that to mold my character, and he taught me it's not all about you. You're not so hot as you think you are. You're not so wise as you think you are. You're not so mature as you think you are. You've just started on this journey, and you're a punk. It's kind of what I had to come to terms with. Like, oh my gosh, that's so true. But that's what God wanted to expose for me, because once that was exposed, I could then start to be changed. When you think you've arrived, you can't be changed anymore. But when you say, I need help, you can be changed, right? Let God change you. But oftentimes we have to suffer in order to have that happen. The other part was then and so this is like a process that keeps, like in my life, God keeps using these things to grow me. Becoming an elder, when I was stepped up into eldership a couple years ago, that was another shock to the system. It's like, if I thought I was mature back then, I definitely thought I was mature by this point, thought I knew what I was getting into, but no, I had no idea. Oh my gosh, way harder, way more crap I did not know I was signing up for. Greg did not warn me. Thanks. And that's the point. It wouldn't have mattered because I knew I could handle it. I thought I could handle it. But oh my gosh, I was in for a world of hurt. And I had just things exposed me about things I believed, things I thought were true, things I thought I could do that were just totally flipped on their head, and has continued to be the case up to months ago. I mean, this is I'm still very much a work in progress, guys. I'm just being honest about that. But oh my gosh, I know this. I'm a work in progress. I got much more to have molded and changed in me. But oh my gosh, I know I am so different than I was 10 years ago. I'm so different than I was 2 years ago when I started being elder. I'm so different than I was 6 months ago. The past 2 years of my life has been the most insane amount of growth and change in me I've ever seen and experienced. And it's exciting because it's developed in me this love, this desire, this increased desire for intimacy with God. That's what's really been cultivated in me. We're just going to him. I need him. That's what's really been impressed by my need for Christ. Oh, it's just been intense. But he's driven me to his arms and has been so good. And I feel more at peace now than I have in ever. Even 2 years ago. It's remarkable how much more at peace I feel, even with everything going on. And the cool thing is looking forward to knowing I'm going to be way more at peace with God years from now. And, I've just been having my mind blown more and more and more about how good he is, how awesome God is, what his character is like, who he is, more than I ever thought. When I, just thinking back, coming out of high school, how much I thought I know, it's ridiculous. You just have so much more than you think you know, like more to know about God than you think as you grow and grow and grow. And that's one of the rewarding things about having your character molded. It's hard, but it is so rewarding. One of the big rewarding elements of being grown as a spiritual leader is that you become someone that people want to imitate. And that is really cool, actually, because as you change, people come to you to ask questions. People recognize that you're someone who sacrifices yourself for others, that you have this maturity, you have this knowledge, you have this wisdom. And so they come to you and they imitate you. And seeing people imitate you is really cool. as long as it's not like they're mocking you, but you know what I mean. They're imitating you. They're like, it's like almost like a little you running around. It's like so sweet, so cool. Um, that's what growing as a leader looks like, and we all should want that. We should all desire that. Paul says, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ," in 1 Corinthians 11:1. Which is good because here's the thing: the imitation thing. Like Paul wasn't perfect, and I'm not perfect, and so when I say imitate me, it's like, well, let's put a qualifier in there. Imitate me insofar as much as I imitate Christ. Imitate those things, right? Which is what Paul's saying. And so let's deal again with this verse 17. Obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be no advantage to you. Right? And this is talking about that kind of that higher form of leadership. How ought we to treat our fellowship group leaders? How ought we to treat our elders? And I'll tell you, now as an elder of 2 years, there's some things I can identify as very helpful. It's hard being elder. It's difficult. And but what's awesome is when we're like setting a new direction, going away, and people are like on board with it and are like, how can I make this work? Right? That is so sweet and helpful. And actually, I'm not really interested in beating you guys over the head with this verse, because I feel like this is an area where our church really excels at. Like, I really don't feel like when we're presenting a new direction, new way to go, a change is play, I don't feel like I have to fight anybody over it. It feels like people are like giving us the benefit of the doubt and being like, all right, how can I help? How can I get on board? You guys are great at it. I don't really know what else to say except good job. Keep doing it. I mean, thanks a lot. And that's really helpful, when that's the case. Now, it's okay to disagree. I'm not saying like, oh, the elder said that this is what we're doing now, so get on board or shut up. No. I welcome your feedback, maybe talk to Ian instead of me. No, I'm just kidding. But what I'm saying is, but coming to your, not just me, but say your fellowship group, home church, whatever, leader, you see an idea or see, you don't like this thing over there, this can be changed. Instead of like, you're screwing up, that's bad. That just gets in the way and it like ruins things, and it's bad. But instead of coming like, I like this direction, I can get on board with this. I wonder if you thought about this before. Way better. That's like we're participating together. We're working together. And again, for the most part, you guys basically do that. So I'm just going to shut up on that point. You guys are doing great. That's actually excellent. But the second quality, being equipped for the work. So I talked about leadership, the need to be the right kind of leader. We talked about how to treat leaders. This verse 9 talks about being equipped for the work and not being misled. It says, do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods which have not benefited those devoted to them. He's talking about, kind of being careful, not being led away by strange teachings. Historically, the strange teachings he's talking about have to do with Jewish Christians who are like adding to the basic message of grace, that, it's not just about having faith in Christ, it's also about performing the Jewish rituals and sacrifices and all this kind of stuff. Like, you got to do that too. And then you can be welcomed into our Christian community. And so he's like, no. That's actually diverse and strange teachings. Why? Because it's adding to grace. The basic message of grace, the basic message of the Bible is this, is that you can be saved, you can be redeemed by Jesus Christ, his sacrifice on the death for you. And if you accept Jesus' sacrifice for you, if you ask Jesus to come into your heart for that forgiveness, you're saved. That's it, right? That's the message of grace. It's grace because it's a free gift, and full stop, right? There it is. There's the gospel message. Adding on to that, like, well, and you got to do this ritual, and you got to do this thing. It's not true. Like, no, there is no and. Like, that is how you become a Christian. And so that's what I want to say to any of you tonight who are not a Christian. If you wouldn't call yourself a Christian, I'm talking about a lot of stuff here. There's a lot of details in the Bible. There's a lot of topics in the Bible, and not everything is necessarily going to be pertinent to you or make sense to you. That's fine. All I want you to walk out of here with is that central grace message, because that is the most important. That's the central thing of the Bible. It's grace. You can be saved. You can know God personally. You can know where you go when you die. And you can know by receiving Christ as your Lord. by praying to him in your heart. That's it. That's what I want you to walk away with if you're not a Christian. Everything else you can ignore for now, because that's really the main thing. So people say, well, but I got to say this. Here's like one of the worst cases of this on Christian Twitter is like the worst thing ever. But I see like tweets all the time like you can't be a Christian and not vote. You can't be a Christian and vote for this person. You can't be a Christian and not wear your mask at a grocery store. You can't be a Christian and blah, blah, blah. And that's just a lie. Actually, you totally can be a Christian and do like anything you want. That's it. You can be a Christian. Like the only qualifier is you can't be a Christian and deny Christ as Lord. Like that's true. That's it. I mean, you're right. I can't be a Christian then. But if you accept Christ as your Lord, then yeah, all these other things, whatever. Like that's what's central. That's it. Anyway. Not being led by diverse, strange teachings, putting grace at the center. To help us with this, 3 guiding principles to remember, okay? 1, teach what the Bible teaches. Teach what the Bible teaches. This is how many a cult, many a false belief has arisen, is that they like have the Bible, like, oh, these things are good, and then they add teachings on top of that are not biblical, not in the Bible. That's where you get in trouble. You get into strange territory there. Teach what the Bible teaches. Don't go outside of that. Don't add things onto that. As a matter of fact, Jesus reamed the Pharisees about that very point. The Pharisees had a bunch of literature that was written about the Old Testament, and they would use that as biblical text, basically. Like this has the same authority. And Jesus was like, no, that's the teachings of men. How about you go back to the Bible? Teach what the Bible teaches. That's why we do what we would call exegetical teachings. So you don't know what that word means, maybe. But what I mean is we do books of the Bible, chapter by chapter at CT. Commonly what you'll find at churches is they'll do topicals, which is each week is a new topic that we're going to teach about. Or they'll have a topic series they go through, which isn't inherently bad, but I don't prefer it because you can get into dangerous territory there, right? Where you can have I have an idea, I have a conviction here, and now I'm going to go to the Bible and pick out the verses that support this, right? That's kind of reversing. You should be going to the Bible first, right? And picking out of that. And so we want to prioritize doing it that way. And so, we do the book by book, chapter by chapter thing. And that's what we've been doing in Hebrews. We're going to do that in Matthew next. That's our next book. Excited for that. Special announcement. Cool. That's why we do that. Emphasize what the Bible emphasizes, right? So there's a lot of truths. There's a lot of guidance. There's a lot of values that are in the Bible to be found, but we get in trouble when we emphasize things that are not emphasized or emphasize certain things over others where we shouldn't, right? What should be most emphasized? Grace. All right. 3 of you knew that. It's really good. Next week, more of you will know about this. You should read about grace. It's an amazing thing. Yes, we emphasize grace. First and foremost, above all these other things. And it's annoying to me when people are emphasizing these side issues as the prime issue. The main problem with church is that they're not following the COVID protocols and they're getting together. And so I'm done with church. It's well, okay, I understand why you might be concerned, but what about grace? What about the community and love? Isn't that an emphasis in the Bible? Main one? Yeah. Okay. This is why a common after CT activity is not protesting abortion clinics. It's just not fun. No, I'm just kidding. We don't do that because we're emphasizing the wrong thing there. What we're doing, we get a lot when we try to shape the culture's morality, trying to go out there and be you need to change what you believe is right and wrong. You fail every time. You cannot convince people in that way without having what needs to happen first. Their heart needs to be transformed first. And so what do we do first? What's our prime directive? Our prime directive is introducing people to Christ, right? And so why would I go protest an abortion clinic right now when I could do what's the prime thing is, which is share Christ with people? Because once you share Christ with people, all of a sudden you see their morals change as a result. Not the other way around. Their morals don't change and then they find Christ. They find Christ and their morals change. That makes sense? So anyway, we can cancel our abortion clinic protest. Just kidding. That's not what we're doing. Yeah. I do. Just for the record, I do believe abortion is wrong. It's an evil. Absolutely. I think that's clearly taught in the Bible. No question about it. But I'm not going to go out and try to shape the public's morality about that. I'm going to tell people about Jesus instead and let him shape them. Anyway, yes, third, equip yourself with solid interpretive skills. So being able to having the skill to interpret the Bible's meaning is key, because here's the secret: you can know what the Bible is saying. You can understand. You can discover objective truth in the Bible, and some of you are like, yeah, duh, but actually that's kind of countercultural, because we live in a culture that's driven by experience. That, you live by your truth, and your truth is your truth, and the Bible can mean whatever you want it to mean. Whatever it means to you is true to you, and whatever it means to me is true to me. I've met Christians who believe this. Like, this passage might means one thing to that person and means a different thing to me, and we're both equally right. And it's like, no, we're not equally right. My interpretation is the correct one. Duh. I'm just kidding. But there is a correct interpretation, and you can have a correct interpretation, and I wish more people understood this. For example, how many of you know who that is? Lecrae. No, it's not Lecrae. I never heard of this guy until I read an article about him this week. His name is Brady Fanatic Godwin. And the fanatic is spelled with a PH, by the way. But, yeah, it's it's his rapper name. So Brady Fanatic Godwin was a Christian hip-hop group, leader of a Christian hip-hop group. And he is one of several individuals over the past many years who have recently renounced his faith. And actually, if you're big into the Christian music scene, you would know who that is. But that's a big deal. And so one of the many reasons he gave for this, well, not many, it's like 3 or 4, but like at the top of it was that, well, I just realized that the Bible can mean whatever you want it to mean. It's totally subjective. And so there's no way to get an absolute truth out of it. And so it's not worth really giving my life to, if that's the case, if it can just mean anything. And it's like, man, that is so untrue. You can know what the Bible means. You can understand it. And, it's especially obvious with the things that the Bible emphasizes over and over and over again, right? Like salvation by grace. It just comes up over and over again, abundantly clear. But it's also the case, even with more complex things, that require some interpretive skill, some applying things like understanding the historical context, understanding the purpose for writing it, understanding the audience. If you can put some critical thinking into this and study, you can totally get like an objective understanding of the passage. That's not impossible. We do this with every other writing, that's ever been done. Like you read a textbook and you can understand basically, unless it's like, a particle physics or something, what it means and what it's saying, right? So we can do that with the Bible. We can understand what it says as long as we have interpretive skills. And the main things of the Bible are very clear. Here's one of the things that he pointed out as like the big proof of this, that the Bible can mean anything it means. He's like, there's so many denominations out there, Christian denominations. And so like that's proof that anyone can make the Bible mean whatever they want it to mean. And so who knows who's right? And so we can't say who's right. So, it's best to just give up. Now, here's the problem with that is that, yeah, you're right. You're right. There are lots of different denominations, but for the most part, the denominations all agree on these central truths, right? With our Baptist brethren, with our free Methodist brethren, I don't know. I can't list every freaking, Pentecostal brothers, whatever. We agree on salvation by grace. We believe Jesus is the only way. But like for the majority of these, denominations, we agree on the central things. It's not like each one's a different religion or something. Like I love my Baptist bros, they kind of practice this weird thing over here. I don't know if I agree with exactly, but they're brothers in Christ and sisters in Christ. That's no problem. We can agree to disagree how we apply some of these things, as long as we agree on the central truths. And so I just want to say that because a lot of people have this false conception that every denomination is like a different religion. No, we agree. Now, there are denominations out there that would reject core things like that Jesus is the only way, right? Or that, it's only through Jesus and not through like doing religious rituals and stuff. Disagree with them. But for the most part, our fellow Protestants, we agree. And we can get an accurate interpretation. So it's important to learn how to interpret. That's why I got to get equipped. Take classes. We offer classes that teach you how to read and study the Bible. We have basic Christianity. There's a leadership training course, and that's why I'm so glad so many of you are in it. And I hope that if you're not, that you have a goal to get in it if you're a Christian. And take it next time it's offered, whatever. But get equipped, learn how to study the Bible, because far too many Christians have no idea how to even study the Bible. And they don't know their Bible. And so they're introduced to strange, weird teachings, and they're flabbergasted by it because they don't know how to answer. A lot of Brady fanatic Godwin's followers are totally like, whoa, yeah, the Bible can mean whatever you want it to mean. Oh, man, that's such a deep truth I never thought about before. It's like, oh, my gosh. Anyway, we got to be educated on this stuff and learn our stuff. Big part. So those are the final two qualities of the healthy church, or not final two, but final two I'm talking about tonight. About the need for spiritual leaders, and how to treat our spiritual leaders. That's in a healthy church, and also being equipped for the work, which ties into leadership too. We got to be equipped as leaders. Anyway, next week we are going to talk about a couple more qualities, and that'll be it for Hebrews. Adam's going to talk about that next week, but I'm going to go ahead and pray us down, and then we're going to have a few of you share questions or pray or whatever. Lord, I just want to thank you. First and foremost, just your grace is so mind-blowing, and it's like, blows people's minds because it's so counter to how we would imagine spirituality, because it's ultimately not about our effort, but accepting your free gift. So I pray for anyone here tonight who has not done that they would seek you out, ask you into their hearts, receive your forgiveness. And, I do want to praise you too. It's just been so cool seeing, like, in this fellowship, there's something unique happening here, and that is that there's so many people who I would be confident, like, putting in a group of Christians to teach. And that's so rare to find in a church. There's so many capable people. There's so many leaders. And I praise you for that, Lord. And I just pray that you would keep the leaders coming in this church. Raise up more leaders. Help identify, those leaders who have the character qualities that you're looking for. It's all about character, not ability to you. And that's actually relieving to understand too, because it's not about how awesome I am, but how awesome you are. And all you're looking at in me is a willingness to follow you and trust you and be molded by you. So pray you raise up more leaders. Pray you can equip us here as a fellowship. And, pray again for Dad suffering tonight. Just give him some relief, Lord. Pray that you would strengthen Mom and, that he could come out of this, operation fully healed eventually here, Lord. And, you've worked miracle after miracle in his situation. And it's just been so encouraging to see that. And, pray that we can have as much time as possible here to spend with them. Amen. All right. Well, yeah. So if you have a question, comment, there it is right there. And you can text them in too.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up, Kyle? So leadership is a funny topic for me when I look back. I think I've been nominated for deaconship like 3 times and never panned out to actually be a deacon, including one of those times where I nominated myself. I was talking to Keith and I'm like, hey, why wasn't I nominated this year? And he's like, oh, did you think you should be? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, then you're nominated. And then a week later it was like, you're not a deacon. So, it's real funny. But, I was kind of like you, I had some success in high school, like leading and, bringing some dudes to Christ and stuff, and then hit college. And I kind of felt like I deserved to be a leader. I kind of had this like entitlement to it. I was like, how can I not be a leader? How can I serve without having the title of a leader? And I think, through my failures, the Lord has taught me a lot about that you really don't need a title to serve and love other people at all. Yeah. And he's revealed that, I had this egotistical, self-serving heart, and he wasn't going to allow me in a leadership position like a deacon or something because I had that self-serving attitude about it. But I don't know. I look back and it is a beautiful thing because he's really helped me learn how to love other people without, having a title or being the center of attention or something like that. But so I guess my encouragement for anybody here that is considering leadership, is don't be afraid of the failure. I've heard this a lot where it's like, oh, if I become a leader, I'm going to fail real bad and it's going to suck because people are going to know that I failed too. Yeah. But you're going to fail regardless, whether you're a leader or whether you're not a leader. So I think that I've learned a lot about things just from leading in the past, but I've learned more about myself and how to love other people from my failures in leadership. So don't be scared of it. The Lord wants to use you, even if it is through some failure with that. But I just want to say that.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, sometimes the best leaders are those reluctant leaders. They're like, I don't know. And then the Lord's just like, no, it's you. Because, they're not seeking it. But that doesn't mean it's bad to want to seek leadership. Paul says to Timothy, to seek to be an overseer is a noble task, that you're seeking. And, basically it's not terrible too, but for the right reasons. For the right reasons is the key. Yeah.
Hello. So I really like your teaching here, Kyle, and you had a point earlier on in it with this idea of when we're, talking about leadership and with people, it's not compliance but conviction. And I really love that point. That's something I've been really convicted about for the last year or two. Is just this idea of that we could try to guide people with our charisma, like you were saying, because I can be a very charismatic person. But when I was early on trying to become a leader and things like that, I had to learn just how charisma just wears off and it's not effective in any way, shape, or form for something that matters for lasting change. But really, a good sign of leadership, and this is something I've been blessed to have a lot of leaders in my life who's helped me. This is the ability to kind of encourage you to pursue and take your salvation in your own hands. Philippians 2:12-13 says, "Therefore, my dear friends, as you have always obeyed, not only in my presence, but now much more in my absence, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you and will act in order to fulfill his good purpose."
Yeah.
And so Paul, he's saying even when I'm not there, his goal is for people to go work out their salvation, continue to do the work and love people. And that's because Paul was a good leader. He didn't have to be right there with them in order to encourage and spur them on to continue to go love people. It was because he had a leadership style that was so focused on loving and actually taking God's approach to leadership that people were excited and encouraged to go and continue to work and do the Lord's work. And so it's really all about, you want to help convince people. As a leader, which it's important to convince people to do the work and take and get excited for it themselves. And like you said, continue and get excited to become leaders, like you say, and aspire to that. That's something that with the whole new vision of that resulted in a lot of our home church splitting. I was used to be an Atlas, and me and Jerry had to make a decision okay, which home church we want to go to. And we decided to go to the younger home church, which is now Tamarack. And one of the things I was really confident on with that, I was you know what, the Lord has raised up a lot of people in my cell group who are aspired to want to be leaders and they are doing awesome stuff. Ian has really helped, me and a lot of these guys too, build up, and the Lord has worked through him to build up people who want to continue to work and to lead. And so I was confident, if I leave, that cell group, that's it's going to work. It's still going to be fruitful. God's still going to provide, because there's other guys, to do the work, because God is going to continue to work in them, and they have that conviction to want to reach people and want to build up his kingdom, which is so sweet. And so I thought you had a really good teaching on what that looks like too with that. So good job.
Yeah, you shouldn't try to beat people into submission. Those of us who are leading others, you really got to be careful of that, not beating people into submission to do something, because they'll do it out of guilt, or they'll do it out of compliance, or they won't do it at all. But it's not real transformation. It's not real growth. The convincing and the showing is the better, more peaceful, gentle way. Yeah, I've had to learn that when I lived in Ministry House. I could be a terror sometimes. I had to learn the hard way, but I learned a lot.
I'd say overall it was fun living with you.
Oh, Alex,
It's a good time.
you would know. That's
Jordan, the way you, one of your points where you said a fear of leadership. If I'm a leader, then I'll mess up. Well, yeah, of course you will, because like you said, everybody will mess up. And the fascinating thing about that is the only person who is surprised in a Bible-believing and grace-oriented church, the only person who's surprised when you mess up is you.
Yeah.
Nobody else is surprised. God sure as heck ain't surprised. I mean, look at aside from Jesus, every main character in the Bible is a giant screw-up over and over again. And it's an amazing thing. That's really cool. I know the Lord is, one of the points you made earlier, Kyle, the refining ability of God for somebody who has poor motives or selfish motives for leadership.
Yeah.
I've been yo-yoed in and out of leadership 4 or 5 times over the course of my walk with the Lord, and only after I decided, I'm sick of this, man. I don't want to be a leader ever again. I think God finally said, oh, It's about time. All right.
Yeah.
Now we
Yeah.
can do something together.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool. And then a second point I wanted to bring up is, and I don't exactly know how to put this, so maybe I'm going to put it wrong, but I think the people who are not leaders make too much of the title of leadership by far, man. And I think that has a tendency to lead to people following other people instead of following Christ, not
Yeah.
imitating them as they imitate Christ, but following them instead of following Christ.
Yeah.
And that leads to a pretty big danger when the person who you look up to fails you, as they will, as every single one of us will be failed and will fail others. That tends to have a really foundation cracking effect on our faith because unbeknownst, often subconsciously, sometimes maybe consciously, but often subconsciously, it's based on our relationship with other people. We have fellowship in our both former and current name because fellowship is super important, but forging that relationship with God directly is super important.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's important to emphasize and important to consider. If your discipler or your home church leader or your best friend in ministry left, would you still be able to follow God? What would that look like?
Yeah. That's a good question. And it's also a good question for leaders to ask, like, if I didn't have the title, would I still be willing to serve and lead like I am now? Or am I doing that because I have the title? And if it's because you have the title, then you shouldn't have the title.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
It might be hard to believe, but I can relate to that as someone who really sought that title.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to talk about the ability versus character, because that was a huge thing for Sharon there and Jordan's life, getting disqualified from deaconship many a time because someone who cared more for the title than or for the show than for the character of the work.
Yeah.
But having that ability was always such an excuse, or like what I don't know how to put it other than it's so easy for someone like me, or if you find yourself as someone who compares yourself a lot with others. Hey, there's a deacon. I'm better than them in this area. I can teach better. I can lead I'm leading a cell group. They're not doing a cell group. I'm doing this better than them. I
Yeah.
organize after home church activities better than that deacon. And so you could just start compare so easily. And I've seen that in my own life and gotten disqualified. I've seen that in people who have left our fellowship over, and heard comments that are just so. I mean, it's just sad to even. It's sad that you even said that out loud.
Yeah, right.
Comparing yourself, like it's I'm embarrassed for you,
Yeah.
and yet I'm embarrassed for myself because I've thought that in my own heart.
Yeah.
And so that character is so intense, and sitting in on the elders meetings with you guys, and seeing some of the I guess frontline bloodiness perhaps of your guys' eldership work, it has switched my thoughts, or at least it's switching, I should say, my thoughts on you don't want to go into these leadership things until the Lord says it's time, because there's, I guess to put it simply, there's men and women that are way more gifted than me, ability, whether in this church or you just look out at the large scale, Mark Driscoll, perhaps, not to name drop him there, way more gifted than me, and yet can fall so easily because ability doesn't matter. It's all about the Lord caring about the character. And so trying to rely on that, and the Lord's timing too. The Lord will shape your character, and He'll do it in His time. And when He says it's time to lead, then it's time to lead.
Yeah.
And it'll be beautiful.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah. If you're interested in leadership, it's not, people ask like, oh, what more can I do? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? How about it's not what you need to do. It's who the Lord wants you to be. And sometimes there's not like a quick solution for that. It's like, you can't just become this now. How about let the Lord mold you? Would you be okay waiting and letting the Lord do that along the process? Some people are like, no way, I'm out of here. Okay, you shouldn't be like, you're definitely not gonna be a leader. You shouldn't be a leader, but when you're willing to do that, it's pretty amazing. The Lord will raise up the unlikeliest of people to be amazing, powerful leaders. Cool. So that's it. Let's hang out. And thanks for coming, everybody. Thanks for prayers. Thanks for your support.